From the Pep Radio newsroom and outdoor pool, here are the stories we are following today. Many members of the Republican Party in both the Pennsylvania State House and State Senate have expressed a desire to challenge marriage equality. If the U.S. Supreme Court, under the influence of Republican justices like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, follow through on their stated intentions, Pennsylvania Republicans would likely introduce legislation to annul marriages for same-sex couples. Leading this effort would be Senator Kim Ward, the Republican Senate pro tempore, who has a long history of blocking LGBTQ plus equality legislation. As Senate leader, she controls what gets brought to the floor for a vote, and she has consistently used her position to keep LGBTQ plus issues out of the conversation, rendering the LGBTQ plus community in Pennsylvania invisible. Here's how this could unfold. If Trump is elected, or I should say reelected, and Justices Thomas and Alito act on their ambitions, Pennsylvania Republicans will have the opportunity they've been waiting for to dismantle same-sex marriages. After passing through the Senate and House, such legislation would land on Governor Josh Shapiro's desk. Now, Governor Shapiro, a champion for our rights, would veto it. But here's the catch. Senator Kim Ward, who leads the Senate, could push for a vote to override the governor's veto. It's no surprise that Senator Ward supports Donald Trump. Pennsylvania log cabin Republicans, those LGBTQ plus Republicans who support Trump, are inadvertently supporting the end of their very own marriages. While some may be indifferent to the fate of their marriage, many of the folks in the LGBTQ community in Pennsylvania deeply care and will fight for the ones that they love. And I should point out, before there was a Pennsylvania Equality Project, there was a Marriage Equality for Pennsylvania, and it's been around since 2011. If marriage equality is rolled back, this election could render the last 13 years of advocacy completely moot. Title IX civil rights law and education protects students and staff at the nation's federally funded schools. In April, the Biden administration issued final rules for adding sexual orientation and gender identity as part of the sex classification of protected classes from discrimination. Thus, transgender and non-binary students were supposed to be protected in schools nationwide to use the bathroom and locker room facilities that match their gender identity and compete in athletic events that also match their gender identity rather than their sex assigned at birth. That was how the law was supposed to be interpreted and rolled out on August 1st. However, Moms for Liberty and other right-wing advocacy groups that oppose the LGBTQ plus community filed lawsuits challenging the changes to Title IX. One particular case was supposed to cover only the 4 states that brought their case to the federal district court in Kansas. Those states were Kansas, Alaska, Utah, and Wyoming. Now that case has had a ripple effect across the country. What the Kansas federal judge agreed to do was allow Moms for Liberty and the other 2 private groups in that case, Young America's Foundation and Female Athletes United, to block the new Title IX regulation at any school where a member or a member's child attends school, even if they are in states that did not challenge the regulation. Thus, schools in Pennsylvania have been impacted in a hodgepodge manner. Enforcement of Title IX in some districts remains at the 2020 version. Other neighboring districts have updated their policy to reflect the changes from the Biden administration. The Kansas case has been appealed to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals and awaits adjudication. Other districts have already opposed the changes prescribed by the federal district court in Kansas, with the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. The ruling protects students who are transgender from discrimination. In Illinois, there is a state law that protects students based on sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as case law from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit, the Chicago-based court that covers Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, that says Title IX protects transgender students. Given the split in the rulings from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Florida and Georgia, among other states, and the rulings from the 4th and 7th Circuits, an eventual appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court is likely. unless the regulations are rolled back with the incoming presidential administration. And now this news. If you thought Meta has been lax on dealing with anti-LGBTQ plus content on its social media brands, you were right. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and WhatsApp, has just hired Dustin Carmack, a former advisor to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis's doomed presidential campaign and an ex-Project 2025 employee. Harvard Cyber Law Clinic and instructor and attorney Alejandra Caraballo revealed the news on X, formerly Twitter, Monday afternoon, providing screenshots from Carmack's LinkedIn profile, which he has since deactivated. Caraballo pointed out that Meta's hire was likely made to deflect criticism from conservatives, but it's also meant to augment the firm's interactions with state governments, as the company has political positions to limit regulation and buy influence. But the move comes amid a period in which Meta's treatment of users, specifically the type of user who runs afoul of much of what Project 2025 wants to do in the United States, has been called into question. In recent months, the LGBTQ plus rights group GLAAD has criticized Meta's content moderation policies on its platforms, saying that they were effectively encouraging an epidemic of anti-transgender hate on their social media sites. The report showed a significant increase in anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ plus posts on Meta's sites, noting that transgender people were routinely called sexual predators, perverts, and groomers in many of those posts. The Project 2025 Manifesto, a conservative playbook for a future Republican presidential administration, has been criticized and derided by Democrats from many of the regressive policies it envisions, especially for those that would dramatically curtail LGBTQ plus and abortion rights. One passage states flat out that children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. I can't read this. I simply cannot read this nonsense from Project 2025 and Moms for Liberty day in and day out and not share how I personally feel. Meta, yes, I'm sorry, but Facebook and Instagram and Threads, you have been slamming on LGBTQ content. You have not allowed material to get out and available. And that is precisely why organizations like Pennsylvania Equality Project formed PEP Radio in the first place, so that we could get around your platform and your servers and your content moderation and have our very own megaphone so that we can reach the entire world without having to cross your path. So Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, if you don't like it, take on the FCC. Carmack's arrival at Meta also coincides with the company's restrictions on political content on Instagram and Threads instituted earlier this year, which limit the reach of accounts that post about politics and social issues. The move sparked protests from journalists, activists, and even meme creators, among others, for discouraging posts about LGBTQ rights, women's rights, and other major social issues, particularly in a presidential election year. That's a look at the news for today. We hope to be back tomorrow on Facebook, but if not, tune in on our own website. That's paequality.com/Pep Radio. For now, let's listen to some more music on Pep Radio, but come November, let's get to the polls and vote.